Redditors who haven't found the right place to post your story. What is it? My grandmother was murdered by her caregiver on the 17th of June 2016. The caregiver hit her in the head with a hammer, dismembered her, put her body parts in trash bags, drove them about 2 hours across the state line and dumped them in the middle of the night. She burned all of her bedding, her purse, and tried to set some of the body parts on fire. On the 21st of June 2016, the detectives interrogated the caregiver with evidence they had collected. She gave a partial confession and told them where the body was. My mom is really struggling. I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks leaving Sunday, which has been a planned trip for a while. We're leaving the country. I feel guilty because my mom is struggling and I'm excited about vacation. I feel guilty that I'm not struggling with everything the same way my mom is. I could write for an hour and still not give you all the details of the crazy stuff that happened with my grandmother's murder, or process all of my feelings. My ex-girlfriend was in a bad car accident and is only breathing by a tube down her throat. I'm helping her mom pay off the bills, but not for my ex. I'm only doing it because her mom treated me like one of her own kids. Everyone thinks I'm doing it because for my ex, but to be honest, I don't care about her anymore because she cheated on me and blamed it on me that she cheated. But many people know she cheated on me cause even though it was ducked up, I didn't need to tell everyone else our business. One time I went to Maine and lobsters were only $3, so I ate 5 of them and puked all over the lawn. I frequently walk my dog at a ravine near my house in Toronto. On more than one occasion, a Chinese tour bus has pulled up and flooded the ravine with old Asian women who proceed to take pictures of me and my dog. Sometimes when I'm feeling down, I just think that somewhere I'm in some old Asian woman's slitty show. When I started using Reddit, I thought that the automatic upvote you got was a glitch that I was experiencing, so I made sure to fix it every time so no one thought I was being rude. I was pretty much a toddler at the time. My parents had bought a brand new inflatable boat for a few $100s. They had fully inflated the boat and were testing it out in the backyard. While they were sitting in it, I went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, went back into the backyard and stabbed the boat right in front of them. My dad went berserk. I'm a preschool teacher. One of my students sheepishly asked me if it was okay to ask me a question. Capital I, of course. Assured her she can always ask me anything on her mind. She then says, only mamas can say mother ducker, right? Yes, only mamas. When I was in high school, I was once really startled because there was a backpack on the floor, and out of the corner of my eye, it looked like a cat. Once my sister lost the lunch check she was supposed to turn into the office at school. Later that day, she found another girl's lunch check on the ground and decided to do a good deed and turn it into the office for her. When my sister got to the office, the girl whose check she had found was there, too, turning in my sister's check that she found on the ground earlier that day. Not really a story, more of a question. Did not know where to post this. I work with a guy who has severe autism. Whenever I come in, I always cheerfully say, hi, name, obviously because of his condition. He never responds. In fact, he doesn't look at me, change his facial expression, or do anything to indicate he heard me, but sometimes, I'll ask him how he is, and he'll look at me in the eye and quietly say, good. Other times, he will come up to me and strike up a conversation with me at his own volition, or if I ask him questions, he'll answer. A lot of times, I'll joke around with him, and I can make him laugh, but this is my question. Is there a chance that I'm bothering him by saying hi to him? Might he just want to be left alone? Or does he maybe appreciate people saying hi to him, even though he can't respond? I have never worked closely with anyone who has autism, so I don't know what their preferences are with certain situations, such as this one. My husband is a high school football coach and the first game of the season is tomorrow. He has already been offered money, sexual favors, and free yard work from parents as long as he starts their kid. He isn't even the head coach. Our oldest son is on the team and my husband likes to point out that our son doesn't always start either. I really hate parents. It is high school. Time to cut the cord. If your kid isn't good, they likely won't be on the field much. One time I ate 26 chocolate chip cookies because I was mad at my little sister and didn't want her to have any. I puked all over the place. Edit, I'm a girl, you loons. I was born with a thing called an umphalisol. Basically my intestines were born in a sack-like thing that came off my belly button area, like a mushroom. The doctors cut me open and put all that good stuff back inside me. And now I don't have a belly button. Edit. The saddest thing I have ever witnessed was a mother's tearful rendition of You Are My Sunshine. This was at the funeral of her 16-year-old son, who had hanged himself in his room a few weeks after Christmas. This was made even more sad by the fact that she had previously lost a child to sudden infant death syndrome. I had a massive growth spurt just before high school. I've only ever met one girl taller than me. I'm 6 feet 6 inches, 2m, tall. I was always super self-conscious about my size, especially because my home life built up a decent amount of muscle to go with the height. In my 3rd year of high school, during lunch period, I hear a lot of angry shouting coming from behind me. I try to ignore it, but a couple seconds later, a guy jumps over the table, grabs a girl by the front of her shirt, and starts slamming the back of her head into the table right next to me. Without thinking, I pulled him off of her and, remembering a little from my early childhood karate classes, pinned his arm behind him and pushed him to the ground, holding him there with my knee between his shoulder blades, until security could come get him. We were both brought to the security office, big school, 3,500 students, where he is taken away by the police. I'm silently panicking, since zero tolerance means I'm just as guilty in this as he is, and he's now sitting in a cop car. The head principal, whom I know decently well, as I was a huge nerd model student, comes in, takes the cuffs off, and tells me to go back to class. He thanks me for pulling the guy off the girl, and for not killing him. He was a good 18 inches shorter and 50 pounds lighter than me. I still struggle with self-image problems, but at least I could do some good with my size. A few years ago I lived and worked in a college town, and I always used to go to the gym at the same time and run on the treadmill. Each time, this creepy guy would come out of nowhere, get on the treadmill next to me, and stare me down. He didn't even try to conceal it. I moved to a different treadmill a few times, and he always moved with me. It made me really uncomfortable, but I always pretended I didn't see him. One day, I decided to check the 6 offender list, and there he was. Gave me the chills. I switched gyms and never saw him again. A few months later, he was arrested for rape. This is really late and no one will probably see this, but back in middle school I wanted to go home so badly because I didn't study for a math test that I faked appendicitis by saying I had a pain in the right side of my abdomen, but they sent me to a clinic or something to get tests and, you guessed it, I had appendicitis and had surgery that day. Turns out my appendix was a few days away from rupturing. Procrastination saves lives, kids. My semi-estranged father robbed 12 banks to pay off drug debts and get money for more heroin. I didn't find out about his drug use until I went to see him at the county jail the night he was arrested. It's been torture on me for 6 months waiting to hear how long he would be in prison. I was worried he wouldn't get out for 20 years. That I'd never have the chance to finally have a relationship with him. After 6 months in prison he is doing really well. He's functioning normally, and is clean. He signed an extremely generous plea deal, lack of priors and a connection to a person who went to prison earlier, and he was prosecuted by the same prosecutor who understood the reasons why he did what he did, and will be out in a few years. We've talked regularly since he's been in, more than in my whole life. I even got to visit him for 2 whole hours a few months ago. So that weight has been lifted and I'll be able to visit him more. Most people don't get to remember the first time their dad tells them he loves them. I do. Through a videophone the night after he was arrested. Edit. Wow. I'm floored by the support. It's been a rough several months, but things are looking up for him. I've fed up to 40 people from supermarket waste whilst living in a tent and completing my master's degree in chemistry. I got interested in trying to avoid using money kind of as a protest against capitalism and kinda because it was addictive. I started with hitchhiking to get around and dumpster diving for food, and after a year of having essentially free food and travel I decided to see if I could get accommodation for free. After some thinking and reading, I ended up posting on the local couchsurfing website, "Can I live in your back garden in a tent?" Someone replied, and I ended up living in the back garden of a mansion from November to May while I completed my studies. My host, let's call him John, got interested in my dumpster diving and asked if he could come along. We ended up driving his Saab convertible to my various food getting spots and filling the car with food. Conveniently, Anna, the woman who was living in the van at the front of the house, was having a going away party. John is a hospitable fellow. Anna enlisted the help of me and the other squatters, musicians, hitchhikers, couchsurfers etc. to prepare a vegan North African feast for the party, which probably cost about a $5 in total. Rice and chickpeas were purchased. This started the tradition of the dumpster dinner. I finished my degree in May and graduated in July. I've lost 2 of my best friends to suicide. The first about 3 years ago, and the second last week. It has been a struggle to find my purpose in life. I think after years, I have finally narrowed it down enough that I realize how I can help people. Starting school in September to become a social worker. Wish me luck. Edit. Just wanted to thank everyone for the luck. When I was young, like 7ish, my dad's friend and his girlfriend came over one night. They came over sometimes. It was a pretty normal thing. Anyway, sometime within like a few days before this day, one of our cats had kittens. We decided to find homes for them. Except for one. We called him Needy because he constantly meowed if someone wasn't petting him. I really bonded to that kitten. The other kittens I loved too, but I had accepted finding other people to take care of them because we already had a couple cats. Back to this particular day, though. For some reason, out of like 5 kittens, my dad's friend's girlfriend liked Needy. You probably know where this is going. My parents did that thing where they act like they're giving you a choice but proceed to then guilt force you into doing the thing they want you to do. I still distinctly remember taking my dad's friend out onto the porch and shaking hands with him on a deal that I would let them take my kitten if they would bring him over every couple weeks or so I could see them. Guess what? I never saw them again. Never. They left with my kitten and literally never came back. This is why using the "you have a choice but not really" technique is something I would never recommend to a parent. Instead of giving them someone to blame, you're making it feel like they have a choice and then jerking it away from them. Now I'm not just mad at my parents, but I still feel like it was partially my fault. Like if I had just continued saying no, maybe I could have ended up keeping my kitten. That was 11 years ago and still thinking about that day pisses me off. I jumped off a moving train once. Was hanging out with a friend and thought it'd be fun to climb on a train. Well, the train started moving and I'm still sitting in the side. I know I have to get off, but I'm scared to jump. But speed keeps building. After maybe 30 seconds, it felt like an hour. I tell myself I have to get off or it'll just keep building speed. So I build my courage, spot a grassy patch ahead, and totally parkour dive off. Like, parallel with the ground. Movie style dive. I land on my side, roll a ton of times and stand up. I immediately check myself for injuries. Find none and search for my phone. It's lost. Plus I heard it shatter. My friend runs up terrified. I went like a mile down the tracks. Well, it doesn't end there. We're walking back. I'm cut up and bloody when a police car showed up. The officer gets out, looks at me and says, "Son, did you jump off the train?" Long story short, someone saw me and reported me. He thought I was a runaway kid at first. Found out I wasn't. Told me I could be thrown in jail on multiple charges but let me off. I had to ride in an ambulance though to make sure I was fine. Which I was. And to conclude, that's when I officially decided to become a paramedic. I really like who I am. And I think I'm pretty great. Nobody else seems to think so though, and I don't know what's wrong with me. Like 19 out of the last 20 times I've set something up with somebody, they've cancelled. And this is not just one person. It's almost all different people. Also they never suggest we reschedule or follow up afterwards. It's as if that was the only time we could ever do something, and since it didn't work out for them, that's it. I know nobody owes me anything, but it's really confusing me. It's almost starting to be funny. I've made plans just to see what happens to the person that causes them to cancel. I just want friends. Edit. Latest example. Asked a girl to a concert last weekend. The show is next week, and she actually seemed interested. Then yesterday her grandpa died. I think me asking her is what probably killed him. I started hearing voices in year 7. Started drinking in year 8 to cope. Finally in year 10, 15 decided to get help and got diagnosed with schizophrenia. Dropped out of high school at the end of year 12 to try to manage my meds and health. I'm now attending college as I want to professionally produce music, scores and soundtracks, and I just got my first paycheck for some contract work for an ad agency. Things are looking much better now. This one time in 9th grade, my friend and I decided to use the restroom before a big test. I didn't give a shit about this test, so I playfully pretended to get really pissed off. In attempt to be obviously not mad, I kick a pipe on the top of a urinal, accidentally knocking it out of the top of the toilet. It was still connected to the wall however. Turns out, I could aim the pipe in different directions. So, I aimed it straight out and tried flushing the toilet. The water launched out of the pipe and hit the wall on the other side of the room. My friend and I were flipping out. This gave me a bright idea. I put the pipe in such a spot where it looked like it was prior to us kicking the duck out of it. However, I pulled it out ever so slightly so water would spray our next unsuspecting victim. I remember kids coming out of the bathroom drenched in water, cussing their brains out because they were so pissed. Good times. I'll be the one happy sorry on this thread, if you don't mind. I work in a children's museum, and earlier this summer I got to work with a group for a summer camp. 2nd 5th grade. At the end of the day we were talking as a class and me and the other guy that were answering questions. At the very end this really little girl raised her hand and asked, Morja, can I give you a hug? Capital I. Of course. Said sure. And 2/3 of the class jumped up for a group hug. Made my week. One time, I ate a full box of honey buns. I worked my dad up saying, Dad, I don't feel goo puke everywhere. I hate honey buns now. When I was 6, I woke up screaming in the middle of the night one night because I had a nightmare. The nightmare was just that my brother ate my chocolate coins, the ones that come in a gold wrapper, and I was so mad that I was screaming at him in my dream, and in real life too I guess. When I was really young I would ask my dad if I was his real son because I was Asian and he was white. He would always tell me that he was my dad and I was his son. I wouldn't bring it up too often but for some reason the thought just itched at the back of my mind. Fast forward to my first year at college. I meet my biological mother and she tells me that my dad isn't my biological father and that I was actually the son of one of my dad's friends from the Navy. My dad didn't find out until I was around 5 and afterward he decided to raise me in spite of my mother cheating on him. When I was about 8 years old I was playing basketball in the front yard with my brother and a neighborhood friend. At some point, the ball bounced out into the road. I saw a car coming quickly up the road towards the ball, but decided to chase out after it anyways. I sprinted towards the ball just in time to kick it across the street before potentially being hit by the car. The car swerved, took out a mailbox, and hit a girl, probably about 14-16 years old, who was walking on the sidewalk. The car drove off without stopping. I ran inside because I was scared. Somebody called the cops and an ambulance showed up. I remember seeing the girl a couple weeks later in a wheelchair. I heard later that the guy that hit her was busted for speeding and for the hit and run. To the girl, wherever you may be, sorry about that and hope you're okay. I've kept all my friends at an arm's distance my entire life. Now, I'm not even sure how to get close to people. I know a family. They adopted 3 kids who were biological brothers and sisters. 2 girls around 3 and 4, a boy who was 5, a buy 2 get 1 free kind of deal. They adopted the kids and wanted to make sure they were comfortable in the house. So they tried to introduce them to some kids in the neighborhood. The new mom's friend Susie and her husband Bob Cook had a couple of kids around the same age. So they invited them over for dinner the 2nd or 3rd night after the kids arrived. Well, the big day comes, and the kids are checking out their new rooms, getting a tour of the house etc. Once the new parents are done with the tour they give them some time to get settled in their rooms without the parents around and head back to the living room. A few minutes later they hear the back door open and shut, and they run out to see what's going on. They find the 3 kids outside with their favorite toys in hand and run towards them to get them. And immediately they all start crying. "Where are you guys going? What's wrong?" The new mom asks. The 5-year-old boy starts bawling and responds, "We don't want you to eat us." Trying not to laugh, the mom asks, "What do you mean? We're not going to eat you." The 5-year-old responds, "But tomorrow on the calendar it says cook kids for dinner." True story. My aunt adopted kids and put cook kids for dinner on the following evening. Kids freaked out. I have an autoimmune disorder called pyoderma gangrenosum and I need to take prednisone steroids every time I see a bump on my legs unless I want a few months of agony and an ugly scar. I can't let go of my past. I just want to be happy. Totally pointless. But I occasionally laugh to myself a bit about this. I'll share a technique I started using in TV interviews to make sure you get to say exactly what you intend. To be clear, I'm incredibly not famous. Have just had to do some local TV interviews. Do not do this if famous. Will fail. I realized that if I misspoke and wanted to guarantee they wouldn't use the screw up instead of the corrected attempt. Instead of stopping I just had to say Methodica. It seemed pretty crazy at first. Am I sure I want to say Methodica on camera? But come on. What are they gonna do? Share it? Impossible. High risk. High reward. Worked every single time. Did say bullet live once. But it was on purpose. Grave A circumflex A diaresis. It was bullet. I was cheated on by my first girlfriend in high school several times. It left me angry and unable to trust a lot of people as she started out as a friend before being romantically involved. I left my hometown because I couldn't stop thinking of her. And since then, every relationship I'm in, I'm just paranoid of what they're doing and if they even love me. To this day, I still think that no one cares for me and just feel bad for how petty I am. I'm in this awesome relationship right now, but I feel like I'm ruining it by my constant complaining that I'm scared no one loves me. Whenever people ask me how I'm doing after my fight with cancer, I lie and tell them I'm okay. A lot of me from before chemo is missing and it eats me knowing I'll never fill those voids back in. Information that made me is gone and instead replaced with panic, anxiety and depression. I see and hear things sometimes. I'm always exhausted no matter what I do or how much sleep I get and I can't really get my doctors to listen to me during checkups. On top of it all, my truck caught fire a few weeks ago. Engine melted into the concrete.